Hello, I'm Zachary O'Shea. This is Box of Teeth, and every day in October I go ahead and whip up a horror-based monster for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So, this is your October Monster a Day for October 3rd, 2023. Okay, for the first week of October, all the monsters that I'm going to be covering are members of the Waning Cult or the monsters that serve them. They're Tier 1 horrors to throw against your players in Dungeons & Dragons, but they can be used for just about any fantasy setting. Today we're going to go ahead and cover the Horned Horror, which is an undead abomination that helps out the Waning Cult. And again, the Waning Cult serves the Waning Princes, a family of Dark Fae. Only the skull of this undead abomination comes from a corpse. From the neck down, the Horned Horror's mockery of a skeleton is actually dead wood branches. Its joints are crafted from congealed blood honey. Its horns are sharp spikes of petrified honeycomb piercing through the cranium. Undying hatred burns within its wide, hollow sockets with such an intensity that withers bravery and greenery alike. The Horned Horror's hands are little more than collections of briar branches eager to rip and tear. Eddies of static electricity glow about its hands, but the wood never actually burns. Within the cult itself, the Horned Horror is a bit of a commander for its undead forces. It's not uncommon for a Waning cult to dabble in necromancy as well as the other vile nature magics gifted to them by the Dark Fae. The Horned Horror combines these two blasphemies into one terrifying effigy. The Horned Horror exists only to slaughter the living and leads the cult's skeletal minions into battle as needed. If all the living cultists are slain, then the Horror and its undead band rampage across the countryside, killing indiscriminately until they're all put down. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at their statistics for D&D 5th edition. Now, the Horned Horror, as mentioned, is a undead creature. It is chaotic evil, but it is under control of the cult most of the time. Like most undead, it is immune to poison. It's got a couple of condition immunities. Because it has a lightning attack, it also has damage resistance to lightning. Damage resistance to lightning and or thunder is very common for Waning Cult and Waning Court monsters. Its big deal is that it does have turn defiance, which it does broadcast the other skeletons with it. Its big claim to fame is Autumn's Kiss. This is an aura around the Horned Horror that does damage to plant creatures that are not aligned with the Waning Cult or the Waning Court, as well as poisoning them. But on the other side of things, if this is a plant that's infested by, like, the Direflies of the Waning Court, or a plant monster that is associated with them, then it heals them every turn, unless the Horned Horror has taken fire or radiant damage. So it's both commanding the skeletons and horrible plant monsters at the same time. It does have a gore attack because of its horns. It does have its claws, which do slashing damage, plus a little bit of lightning damage. And much like a mummy, for example, it does have a dreadful glare that it can focus on to freeze the living and make them frightened. So there we go. It's a pretty simplistic creature overall, but one that you can use for great effect as it's marching across the countryside with skeletons and maybe a couple of deadwood trees, and all the other vegetation around it is quickly withering. Definitely an image that is going to stir players into action. I hope you enjoyed the Horned Horror. Come back again tomorrow for another monster. If you're interested in all the other monsters I've made for the last 4 years for October, or hundreds of other horror-themed monsters for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, they're all available at boxofteeth.blogspot.com, and they're all perfectly free to view. If you would like to take a look at the other horror role-playing game projects that I've done that have nothing to do with Dungeons & Dragons, or my horror writing, including Grease Paint Right There, which has a killer clown. It's great for the spooky season. You can always go to www.zacharyoshea.com. All right, I really appreciate your time and your attention. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.